becomes nothing but truth on AFR Talk.
Welcome back. Your vein is going to pop out. It's going to explode, Crane. You're tweaking, man. No, this is not a game. It's not a game, and it's obvious if it's exposed. A lot of people say, you can't blame the media for everything, but they're a part of it. No, I can blame people not sticking up for their principles and standing by them, sacrificing them, if you will. I can look to the way the message and the narrative is shaped and accepting a false premise. So many times, I think conservatives do that as well as Republicans. Sometimes there's the same thing. Nonetheless, they are a part of it. I don't blame the media for everything. Inevitably, it's up to a particular party or group to get their message across. On the Facebook right now, I am posting just now the Shimkus double counting. Tell me what you think there. Also, tell me what you think of the show. People are chiming in as we speak. Pris, I agree with you. Well, thank you, Pris. Big time. And many of you, if you disagree with me, you can put that down too. American Family Radio, like the page. You could also check out news on Jim Hoff, who is asking for your prayers. He is the Gateway Pundit, lost his insurance. Maybe puts down some stories about how maybe you know someone or you have experienced what Jim is experiencing. Now we move to another discussion. Wait, you're just going to leave it that way? You sound sour. It's Wednesday. You're getting bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm getting to the point where I can ask myself what's good about this. What's good about exposing this is each and every day as more people are impacted directly by the policy of Obamacare, the law of Obamacare, people are waking up to what's wrong with Obamacare. And in essence, if you understand what's wrong with central planning and big government attempting to take over 1/6 of the economy, then you pretty much understand what's wrong with modern-day liberalism. And that's a good thing. So that's what's good about it, the exposure. Paul Ryan is defending his budget deal and hoping that he will have enough votes in the House, as Patty Murray hopes there's enough votes in the Senate. Which the deal removes the sequester cuts for promised cuts later. It also returns the appropriations process back to Congress. It restores some of the cuts that were made in defense and trades off for raising of fees, meaning in some way a fee, tax, whatever you want to call it, but that's trading spending in essence. For that spending, you're going to have to pay more with these hikes. And there are people who are coming out against it big time. I certainly understand it. I wouldn't vote for it. As imperfect as it was, sequester and the cuts that were made in the fashion, arbitrary way they were made, they were effective in cutting spending, and they were also an important tool that could be used in negotiation and maybe not sacrificed right in the beginning just to avoid government shutdowns. That's part of this. Paul Ryan last night on Greta Van Sustren's program explained what is the essence of the positive of this deal, what the strategery is, if you will. And here he is. Now, if you listen to this, this is why he moved ahead on this deal. We could talk about some pluses with pension reform. I get that. Roll it.
We haven't had a bipartisan budget agreement where both houses are controlled by different parties like this since 1986. So putting something like this together is not easy to do. It allows some give and take. As far as I'm concerned, I think this is a step in the right direction. It advances our principles of fiscal conservatism. More importantly, it stops the government from shutting down in January, and it stops the government from possibly shutting down in October.
Does it have?
And we think government shutdowns are not in our interest. I think some people would like to see the political distraction of a government shutdown. We would like to focus on doing oversight of the executive branch, oversight on Obamacare, oversight on the IRS, and not focus on these government shutdowns.
That's really what this is about. It's not about the spending. And they're going to try to sell the good points of it in the sense that, oh, we didn't raise or we didn't extend the emergency unemployment benefits, and that did not work. And having more, the federal workers pay more into their pensions as a percentage. And I think those could be positive ideas. But if you look at the initial spending, you see the spending increasing for promised cuts later, which we haven't really ever seen work. On the whole of a budget deal, we have, in essence, sacrificed, we've increased spending. That's what we've done in the sense of our government, Republicans and Democrats. But it's not about the spending. This is all about 2014 and shaping the narrative and keeping the focus on Obamacare. I think we could have done both. Personally, as a conservative, I think absolutely. I think you're still going to get the debt ceiling debate, so that's still in the arsenal to come up. But this was a strategic move. You could say it's less than principled. Yes, absolutely. But it's all about 2014. And 2014, the elections, all about keeping the focus right where it is. I think about the fact that, well, what would have been possible? Because we could talk about a lot of things, and we could have continued to do the process as it was. But politics is the art of what's possible, and this was possible. But it's not something that you sit there and say, gee, if 2014 weren't up and the elections and the issues the way they were, the environment the way it is today politically, would they have gone through this? I don't see Paul Ryan doing it, no. And he's trying to sell it, and I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he desires to cut spending. See, that's the other part of this. I think there are those in the Republican Party that may support this deal that desire spending cuts. They do. I think there are those in the Republican Party that don't. And will support it. The critics of this have already spoken out in reading the initial reports on it. And John Boehner, the House Speaker, took exception to them today in a press conference. Roll it.
You mean the groups that came out and opposed it before they ever saw?
Yes, those groups. Are you worried that
They're using our members and they're using the American people for their own goals. This is ridiculous.
Casey, Boehner have some fire in his Cheerios today. He is not happy about that.
That's a pretty aggressive stand from House Speaker John Boehner. These groups have caused him interminable problems over the last couple of years as he's tried to govern. We saw it with the last government shutdown fight. So what you're seeing here is Boehner really standing up there, and he's defending this budget deal that they've agreed on.
Now, do you see how this goes? If it's all about the narrative and it's all about the strategy, if it's all about that, then Boehner just made a critical error. If they're justifying it, and I believe deep down that's what they are doing, justifying it, saying we need to keep the focus on Obamacare, they've just played into the narrative of the Republican Party being at war with itself and the Tea Party being the real problem with the Republican Party. The conservatives within the Republican Party who are holding their membership to account when it comes to spending and the business as usual and the compromises of spending for more spending, trading cuts for spending instead of cutting spending. then he just went into that narrative. Now, he spoke to the specific groups, but if you're really looking to do that, that's not the answer you want to give. And what bothers me about this is whenever we start talking about the politics of it and the meta and the strategy overall to somehow inoculate the Republican Party, and this is the Republican Party thinking here, from attacks that they'll be looked at as or blamed for anything that could possibly be blamed on them, be it the shutdown or anything that cuts the spending in a way and holds people to account in that way. So they do that, and what comes back is they say, okay, in essence, I think Bill Kristol weighed in on this, read part of his piece on a Weekly Standard, and they're going with this is the best we could do at the time, and this is a good thing because it takes the issues off the table. It defends us. It protects us from those attacks. And then you go into that one with this narrative of, oh, yeah, those groups that didn't read it, and they're just doing it for, no, they're not doing it for their own personal gain. You shouldn't cast aspersions on one's motives there, Mr. Speaker. They're principled. They're looking at government as usual, and they say they've got a problem. And anything that goes into government as usual where compromise leads to spending for spending or more spending now for promised cuts later, they don't believe, and rightfully so. When they talk about draconian cuts in defense, arbitrary, yes. Draconian, not when you look at the charts. Wonderful chart by Pedakoukas over at American Enterprise Institute on this. So what I'm saying is, would I vote for it? No. Do I support it in that way? No. Do I understand the strategy? Yes. Do I think it's been poorly executed already? Yes. Do I think by sacrificing your principles, you advance them? No, I do not. And there are many ways to break this down. I haven't heard the analysis. I know that Dan the Mancilia knocked it out of the park, though, this morning. I'm sure financial issues, Dan the Mancilia. And people talking on AFR Talk, certainly you're going to get a lot of different points of view and different breakdowns. I'm just focusing in on overall strategy and where we are and what happens with the narrative and keeping the focus on Obamacare. So no, I don't think it's a good execution of moving forward and how to do it. Because when you're not talking about reforming entitlements, you're never talking about addressing the problem. And as imperfect and arbitrary as sequester was and reckless, it was relatively small, but it did deliver the cuts in spending. So that's where I am. Wherever you are, you can make that decision. Buffet, take it, leave it. Does that change my view on Ryan as someone who is being dedicated to getting government under control in the sense of spending and reforming it and dedicated to that? Do I think he is somehow not as in favor of it? No, I think he has a different way to get there, and I disagree with the way he gets there. Because I look at Paul Ryan, quite frankly, as a man who has brought solution after solution after solution up. And while I can disagree with him on this strategy and moving ahead, I look at his history and I say, this man has been about confronting the elephant in the room of entitlements, and he's put himself on the line time and time again to do that. When we are dealing in a society right now, in a government, we're dealing with a society where we have a huge welfare state. We have a president who uses class, race, whatever economic class, race, whatever he can to divide. And he gets the megaphone, not necessarily from the bully pulpit, but from the mainstream media, echoing these things and accepting the false premise so often, thereby shaping a false narrative. And you're combating that time and time again, because when you talk about compassion and you measure it in dollars, And when you talk about results and people who are not finishing at the same place but may have access overall to the same American dream in the sense of the law treating you in a place where you're equal under the law and you can rise from one quintile to another, to another, to another. And we have balance in government powers, even though they're being abused right now. When you talk about those things, and we have people who are getting the narrative of victimization time and time again, you have to come back to a place where the idea of what we understand is going to make America work as conservatives, you better go on the offense. And you better start challenging the narrative. And you better stand up for your principles and start making that case. But if you have people within your own movement, say in the Republican Party, who undercut you as Ted Cruz was undercut, as Senator Lee was undercut, you are not going to win when you have, 1, the president against you, 2, the mainstream media against you, 3, opposition research supplied by your own party against you. You're just not going to win the debate. So, again, I understand why they did it. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't vote for it. And I think they will soon learn that you can't sacrifice principle and advance it, and advance them, and count on advancing them. You just can't do it. It undermines your foundation. Brain Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.